Welcome to TRADEREP. This is Shorthammer. It is the 3rd of July, 2019, and we are looking at Tesla. Now, yesterday, post-market, Tesla released its production numbers. They were higher than were expected, and we had a nice squeeze and a push up after the close of market hours. Now, if we look at Tesla over the last, let's say, 6 to 7 months, they've just been in this downtrend. Just slowly, every chance we test this line, we go down further. And it's just been overall just mistakes made by the company. And Wall Street changing their tune on Tesla, really just trying to hammer Tesla down. And they had a lot of people that were short, a lot of funds that were short, that felt as if Elon manipulated the stock and kind of screwed them over. So this was their opportunity to get revenge. And analysts downgraded Tesla. We hit the 180s, and here's where the buyers stepped in. And we see that when we retested this 224 by 227 supply-demand zone, it struggled. It approached this downtrend and starting to reject again, but we found a little bit of support in the 215s. It's trying to ride back up into it again. We had a push through, but then immediately the next day we were back down through it. So it seemed as if the downtrend was going to hold. But what do we have miraculously? At the close, production numbers are out, and we pop. Now, if we look at this next level, this 248 by 252, we'll see here potential approach of that area and a bounce. Here, a cluster. Lots of testing of this area, and then a bounce. Here, testing that area and a bounce. So, what I'm going to personally look for, and here also, a test and a bounce and a recovery. What I'm going to be looking for potentially on Tesla is a pullback to maybe the mid 230s here in this area, and then a leg into this next supply demand zone. We'll see if we get that. So that's on our daily chart. Now let's take a peek at our 4-hour chart. Now on the 4-hour, you clearly see the break after hours, this candle here. And the expectation is potentially a pullback to this area here before we take the next step, next leg on this. If we pull back for some strange reason below this supply demand zone or below this trend line, then that would invalidate my thought process that we're going to go up based on the news of the production numbers. Now we can still, after this pop, there could be negative press and things can happen, but Tesla, usually when you get a pop, we get a squeeze. So we'll see if we see continuation later today on this into next week on Tesla into this next supply demand zone or maybe higher. We have earnings coming up. I believe it's the either end of July or early August, the first week in August. We have earnings coming up. But let's slide this to the left and take a peek at the 5-minute. Now on the 5-minute, you can see that we pull back below the trend line that we had drawn and we looked at earlier. This yellow dash line is a main intraday pivot. We pulled below, tried to kind of retest and hold, couldn't, and just sold off. And tried to hold this pivot here, it couldn't, down lower, down to this weekly pivot. And we rode on this weekly pivot, rode along this from, looks like around lunchtime all the way through to just hanging in this area, this zone here, below the bottom of our supply demand zone. And then right into the close, we regain that area, and after hours, we see that spike after the production numbers. So going into tomorrow, I'm going to look for a test of the potentially the 235 area and maybe a little bit lower to get long. And I'm probably going to be looking for either next week's calls or further dated calls, just because this week is not, you have a half a day today and then you have no trading on Thursday. So the theta might be interesting. So for me personally, unless you're going to be in the money, if you're going to be out of the money, I would get a further dated call on Tesla if you're wishing to play the potential momentum shift and a squeeze to the upside.